Race to the top will be more of what has already failed. We are heading in the wrong direction. As I mentioned, I've been traveling around the country, and when I tell people they can listen to me, they cannot listen to me, they'll do what they want to do, say no. Don't do it, don't participate, they're bribing you to do the wrong things. If you want to do those things, do them anyway. Don't do them because the federal government's offering you. What's happening today, whether you like Race to the Top or not, is that the states are ceding control to the federal government in a way that is unprecedented in American history. So we not only see a federal takeover of state policy at a time of budget crisis, we now see with laws like Senate Bill 191, a state takeover of policies that previously were subject to local decision making. What Race to the Top is doing is to say to the states, you must open the doors to many more charter schools, even though there's no evidence that charter schools in aggregate will improve education. You must do more of the same testing, There's No Child Left Behind, and use those tests to close hundreds or perhaps thousands of schools, even though there's no evidence that closing schools helps kids and makes better education. The model for this, I believe, would be Chicago, where Duncan pursued a policy called Renaissance 2010, where they close schools, open schools, close schools, open schools. Chicago is today still one of the lowest performing districts in the country, and it's pathetic that it has to be set up as a model for turning around when Duncan did not turn around Chicago. The program there, Renaissance 2010, when I was in Chicago on my marathon race across the country, I spoke to several audiences and I asked the question, it's 2010, have you had a Renaissance yet? And I never found anyone who said yes. So the next thing that Race to the Top is propelling is this idea of judging teachers by student test scores. Now the problem with doing this at all is that teachers are not solely responsible for student gains or losses. There are many factors that affect student achievement over which teachers have no control. The most important factor is student effort, student motivation, student efforts. If students don't do their homework, the teacher can't make them. She's not at their home. If students don't show up for school, the teacher can't go to their home and rouse them out of bed and bring them to school. Student effort and student motivation, student attendance are critical ingredients over which the teacher has very little control. Another important ingredient, which most people up until these days would have said was very important in affecting student achievement, was family support, or lack thereof. When families become engaged, it tends to impact on student achievement. And when they don't set aside room for study and for quiet time and turn off the TV, that has an impact too. There's a whole wall of studies that demonstrate the importance of family support. Poverty, despite what some of the so-called educational reformers will tell you, poverty has an immense impact on student achievement. You can take any test ever given over any length of time, and the most reliable predictor of student performance is either poverty or affluence. It is not an accident that affluent kids have high scores and poor kids have low scores. And you cannot say it's just because affluent kids have great teachers and poor kids have bad teachers. This is not true. What this state and every state needs is a good evaluation system that's based on professional standards, not on legislative action. Of course, bad teachers should be removed, but how do they get hired? Who hired them? The unions don't hire bad teachers. The unions don't evaluate teachers. Teachers don't evaluate themselves. Who gives bad teachers tenure? Why aren't we talking about looking at the whole process of evaluation and finding out what kinds of people are principals who are doing the evaluations? An administrator who's making an evaluation of teachers should, of course, pay attention to scores. If a teacher is never able to help kids learn, that should be taken into account and should count against the teacher. But there should also be peer review. The administrator himself or herself should be someone who is deeply knowledgeable about education. This is one of the reasons why I think that principals ought to be master teachers. No one, certainly not me, would defend teachers who are incompetent or who refuse help or who can't improve despite repeated efforts to help them. But I do think that on this issue, my feeling is very strong that you cannot fire your way to better education. The whole sort of current wave of thought about we should have an effective teacher in every classroom. Who can disagree? We'd love to have an effective teacher in every classroom. The problem is no one knows how to identify an effective teacher. And if you read the literature, as I did, and I report on it in chapter 9 of my book, what you'll find is that the experts will say, well, you can't predict in advance who will be an effective teacher because nothing matters. Degrees don't matter, education doesn't matter, experience doesn't matter, test scores don't matter. The only way you can find out who's effective is to wait 3 to 5 years to find out who got the higher test scores year after year. And then you'll find out. So it'll take those 3 to 5 years to say, aha, now we know who the effective teachers are, and we can fire the others and replace them with brand new people who've never taught and find out in 3 to 5 years if they're effective. Of course, this is a big game of musical chairs, because one of the things that, I mean, educational research is famous for having divergent findings. One of the things in which virtually all researchers agree is that the least effective teachers are those in the first 3 years. So what you're promising to do is to constantly bring an influx of the least effective teachers as you continue firing people who didn't get year after year after year of big gains. One last point, and that is that in the direction of SB 191, to me, one of the most toxic elements of it is that you're putting into students' hands the fate of their teachers. By giving students the control of their teacher's salary and their teacher's evaluation, you're in effect letting them decide the teacher's fate. And that is yet one more effort to erode adult authority in an institution where adult authority is absolutely essential. And if you think we have problems now with discipline, think how bad it's going to be when the students have the power to get their teacher fired. Wow, good luck to you. The biggest problem we have with teachers today, bigger than the problem of bad teachers, because you can identify them and you can remove them. It can be done, and there should be an expeditious system for it, is teacher attrition. 50% of the people who go into teaching are gone within 5 years. There's a big investment in them as a human resource, as potential teachers, and 50% of them leave within 5 years. That's an expensive proposition. If half of those people might have been excellent teachers, you've lost a lot of excellent people. If you could solve that problem, that would be a huge thing to do. What a waste of talent. Why assume that there's just an enormous reservoir of good and great and wonderful teachers waiting to jump in after you've fired the last crop? It makes no sense. Supply is a problem, especially when the evaluation system is one that will repel people from teaching because they don't want to be in a punitive atmosphere. I think the biggest problem that Colorado ought to be facing and other states should be facing is how to improve the working conditions and provide the support that teachers need to improve. I just wanted to cite another little piece of data that I enjoyed, which is what we're doing now is we're blaming the assembly line workers for the quality of the cars. And what GM found back in the 80s, I've just been reading books about Edward Deming, is that the usual reason that things go wrong is that the system's bad. The individuals in it are usually doing the best job they know how to do. I mean, Deming says that people take jobs hoping that they can find some pleasure in their work and find some personal satisfaction. And if the system keeps getting in their way, they get very frustrated. He says that 85% of quality problems are caused by the system, 15% are caused by faulty individuals. And the biggest problem that Colorado faces, that America faces, is we have a bad system that needs a lot of improvement. It needs to be a system where there are good working conditions for teachers, where teachers can be fairly judged and not judged in this very punitive and harsh way. And I think that what you're doing with 191 is to demoralize teachers, undermine professionalism, erode local control, and change teachers from professionals to functionaries. This is not going to help you. When I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, which was 7 o'clock in the morning in the real world. Right, it's only, right. I woke up at 6, which is when I usually wake up. I suddenly had this vision from Lord of the Rings. And the vision was about the people inside the castle trying to defend civilization. And the orcs are coming, and you hear this tramp, tramp, tramp. And I thought, the orcs are coming in Colorado. Be careful. Thank you.